boss walked in, and he thought it was a mannequin. I moved the sheet a little bit, and I noticed that there was a body.
I came out and I responded to the Primrose Motel. I was told to go to room number 1. The room was a mess. It was dirty. The beds were unmade. There was a trash bag on the floor. There was other alcohol bottles.
I noticed that she had shrink wrap wrapped around her legs, and it was going up her torso.
We had to actually dismantle the couch to get her out without causing any damage to any of the evidence or anything.
It was awful. I've never seen any human being treated like that.
He started smashing her against the dashboard. I thought he was going to kill us both.
I said, I have a bad feeling and I just want you to be safe. And she got in her car, and that was the last time I saw her.
The morning of June 1st, 2015, Adams County Sheriff's Department responded to a body found in the Primrose Motel in Denver, Colorado.
Being a patrol deputy is a blank slate. You imagine you're going to deal with some craziness throughout your shift, but it's hard to imagine worst case scenarios sometimes. Preparing yourself and then actually seeing her are two completely different things. Walking in and seeing that type of scene and knowing that is a human. That is somebody that we take a vow to protect, and seeing somebody in that state, it was very, very tragic.
I came out and I responded to the Primrose Motel. We got on scene, got briefed by the deputies that were there on scene. At that point, I went into room number 1.
And I remember the horror of the scene and the gruesome nature of how the body was found.
The room was a mess. It was dirty. The beds were unmade. There was a trash bag on the floor. There was other empty alcohol bottles. Cushions from inside the couch had been removed, and one was on the floor and one was on one of the 2 beds that were in the room.
At first, I was kind of like, where's the body at? Because it was so well concealed.
Investigators finally uncover the young woman's body hidden inside the couch.
The foam part of the cushion had been removed, and that was on the bed. But the covers to those cushions had been laid on the couch to make it look as if someone were just looking in the window or looking through the door on first glance, that there was nothing amiss, that the couch was as it should have been.
You really had to look because they really had concealed her. I think the best way to describe it would be inhumane. She was just stuffed in there. It was awful. I've never seen any human being treated like that.
She had a pillowcase over her head that was tied at her neck, and then her hands were bound and her ankles were bound by a sheet. She had some underwear that were down below her knees, and that was the only thing she was wearing.
It wasn't a full-size couch, only a love seat, so it only sat 2 people. You can see that her legs were curled up most of the way. Her head was kind of bent down a little bit and down inside the couch. We had to actually dismantle the couch to get her out without causing any damage in the evidence or anything.
It's an absolutely gruesome, despicable act.
Investigators speak to the motel manager who had discovered the body.
The manager was doing his usual morning rounds. He came to the room to check and see if they were going to pay for another night. He said there was a little handwritten note on a piece of paper that said, "Do not disturb," on the door, but he knocked anyway to see if they're going to stay because checkout time was 10:30. They didn't hear anything, so then came back again later, knocked, found the door was unlocked, and he entered inside. The owner came in and was starting to assist him with cleaning the room. They didn't see the vehicle that they came in any longer. They didn't see anybody in the room, and assumed they just left without checking out.
My boss walked in, and he thought it was a mannequin. I moved the sheet a little bit, and I noticed that there was a body. I said it's a female, and I told him I was going to call 911.
Investigators began to process the scene and collect evidence.
There was a little bit of blood in the bathroom. There was the do not disturb note that was on the door was taken. There was another one in the room, as a matter of fact, that said do not disturb. That one was taken as well.
Detectives do not yet know the victim's identity, but they catch a break when they locate her car in the parking lot.
It was her vehicle that was there. The registration was provided to the office, and they made a copy of it. That was one piece of the puzzle. One of our detectives actually took her fingerprints and was able to get a positive hit when he compared the index finger from her driver's license, was able to make a positive match for Abigail Cozad. We were later notified that her father was at his local PD trying to report her as a missing person. We brought him to the interview room, and unfortunately was the one who had to tell him what had happened, that, we definitely found Abby and we positively identified her. At that point, he was able to provide us with some information. This is Claudia. I'm sorry,
Sarah.
This is Sarah. They're both making that vacancy with the sheriff's office. And they're here for you. Okay. And whatever you need. We'd like to ask you some things.
Sure.
When you're ready to. Do you know where Abigail was living?
With me.
She was living at home? When was the last time that you saw her?
Saturday afternoon.
Saturday afternoon? About what time?
Between 6 and 6:30. Actually, it was Saturday evening, now to think about it. So I went to Sam's Club. I got home right at 6, and she left just shortly after that.
Okay. Did you say where she was going or anything? Or?
Said she was coming down to Denver.
Was she planning on meeting anybody? Or?
Yeah, these guys right here. She called him Emilio, but he also gave her the name Daniel. Memorial weekend, she disappeared also for several days. She disappeared. I was watching her bank accounts, and these people had her car. They had her debit card. They were withdrawing money. They withdrew over $1,000 cash out of her bank account. I started asking more questions when I started seeing all the money, and tried to advise her that these people probably aren't good. She told me they were gangbangers. Told her she probably shouldn't be hanging out with them. This Danny's girlfriend, or Emilio, she called him Emilio, apparently grabbed her by the throat and tried to beat her up. She had bruises on her shoulders. She had bruises and scrapes all over her knees. After she told me that, I went through her cell phone. That's when I wrote these notes this Saturday morning. And wrote all the numbers down and the names.
The screenshots taken by Abigail's father reveal that she had been seeing this man called Emilio for about a month.
What was really important was the identification of this man that she had met a mere 30 days before, and in the span of that time had started a relationship with Abby. He was one of the last people that she was with, to her dad's knowledge.
As the last person seen of Abigail when she was alive, Emilio becomes a prime suspect in her murder. Police need to bring him in for questioning as soon as possible. On June 1st, 2015, the body of 31-year-old Abigail Cozad was found at the Primrose Motel in Denver, Colorado. Police officers take the statement of the Primrose Motel's maintenance staff. He claims he saw Abigail arrive at the motel the day before with Teresa Dean and 2 other people.
I did see Teresa come out of the room and go to the I call it, but it's more like a hatchback of the Honda, open it up, and I looked and I seen a female inside getting out of the trunk.
And what was up with this female? Was anything strange or unusual?
Yeah, it was kind of strange. First thing I noticed, well, why was she in the trunk, coming out of the trunk, you know? And then as she got out of the trunk, I noticed that she had some, I call it saran wrap, but it's more like shrink wrap on her, and it was like wrapped around her legs and each leg individually, and it was going up her torso. It was like mid-range of her stomach, but it wasn't wrapped real tight.
Okay, so it was just wrapped around her each leg individually. Her legs weren't bound together?
No.
Okay, and then up, and you said probably up her stomach?
Yeah, like middle of her torso, yeah.
Did she have clothing on underneath?
Yeah, she had a pair of jeans on, and the shrink wrap was really, it wasn't tight, it was kind of loose, and her pants were unzipped and unbuttoned, and, you know, upon her getting out of the truck, she stood up, and, you know, and I asked, she looked like she was either intoxicated or high, and I asked her if she was okay, and she did speak to me, and she said she was fine.
Okay, did she look like she was scared?
Yeah, she looked like she was scared, but it was like, she was scared, but it looked like she was also under the influence. So, you know, that's why I asked her if she was okay, because I noticed the shrink wrap was on her, and I didn't want, you know, I didn't know what was going on, you know. But she did walk inside the room.
Did she seem like she was being pushed in the room, or?
No, she walked on her own power right beside Teresa. They walked together in the room.
So seeing someone like that really didn't surprise you?
It didn't surprise me because I've known Teresa to do weird stuff with people, you know.
What do you mean by weird stuff?
Like either, you know, come dressed up in a costume or something, or have, you know, guys over and do role playing and stuff with them and stuff like that. You know, I just know that she does weird stuff, you know.
He just kind of wrote it off as another day at the Primrose. It's very typical of that area.
So is this just not something else you thought was just another weird thing?
Yeah, that she was just doing, you know. Because I didn't know that she would go that far with somebody, you know.
Detectives now have the difficult task of notifying the rest of Abigail's family.
I had a knock on my door, and I was met by a Tualatin police officer and a minister letting me know that my daughter had been murdered. They couldn't share much. All they told me was that they had found her body in a motel, and it was most definitely a homicide. They actually stayed with me at that house for a couple hours, which I really appreciated at that time. That was a lot of information to take in.
Abby was bright, intelligent, fun-loving young lady. Beautiful young lady with a great future ahead of her.
It's hard to imagine that somebody would want to take her life, and you're trying to process that.
Abby was my older sister. She was 4 years older than I am. Abby was very protective of me. Being my older sister, she liked to pick on me, but nobody else could pick on me. She was just a very loving, caring older sister.
Abigail's life changed dramatically at 16 years old.
She was a junior in high school. This was the Christmas break. She had gone out with some friends, and they were hanging out, and when they were on their way back home, there was a car accident. He hit a drunk driver. We got that call in the middle of the night that every parent doesn't want to get, and that is that we have a young female in our hospital. We have reason to believe it's your daughter, and you need to come quick. They told us that she had a brain injury. She was in a coma for about 4 weeks.
Abby defied expectations daily. I remember visiting her in the rehabilitation hospital and seeing her sit up on her own for the first time. I remember hearing her speak my name for the first time. She learned to walk again. She had a long journey, but she never gave up.
She fought hard. She was part of that vulnerable population because no matter how much progress she made, you could tell she still had a brain injury, but she was determined to become as normal as possible.
After a breakup with her boyfriend, Abigail is brought to counseling where she meets the man who goes by Emilio.
We'd gotten Abby into counseling through her primary care provider. That agency also specializes in individuals who are court-ordered for treatment. And so now you have a vulnerable person who is obviously vulnerable just by looking at her, talking to her, is now put in with individuals that capitalize on others that are vulnerable. She became a prime target for them.
A month after they meet, Emilio invites Abigail on a double date. Her father is concerned for her well-being.
There just was things that she was talking about, where they were living and what they were doing and why they were, kind of just hearing their stories. It was about 6 o'clock that evening, that Saturday evening, and I walked with her out to her car, and I gave her a big hug in the driveway, and I told her, I said, Abby, I said, I really wish you weren't going on this, but I'm not going to stop you. But I said, I have a bad feeling, and I just want you to be safe, and if anything feels wrong about this at all, please just leave and come home. And she said, don't worry, Dad, I will. I promise you I will. And she got in her car, and that was the last time I saw her.
Detectives continue their investigation by retrieving the details of the motel booking.
The one who rented the room was Teresa Dean. She actually rented the room in her name, had her home address on it. The owner of the motel knew her there. The male that was with them, they did not know him. They didn't recognize him at all. There's another woman that was there with them. They identified her as, at first, Lori or Star. We later found out what her real name was.
The staff at the Primrose Motel identified the other woman as Laura Ortega. Police need to figure out a way to compel Ortega to talk about what happened inside Motel Room 1.
Well, you were in the car when they pulled into the Primrose, correct? Okay. So she gets out of the back trunk. You did not see her get out of that trunk area?
No.
Okay. You guys are drinking, doing your thing? And at one point, things obviously went bad. So how did it escalate into the attack onto this girl?
The love part and the talking and calling her.
I want you to go into detail on that, please.
Okay. Don't you love me, babe?
Who said that?
The girl was on the couch. And, you dumb bitch came out of his mouth. And then Teresa looked behind. And she slammed the thing on the table. And the girl had got up. And that Teresa pushed her into the bathroom. And then he came behind. And I heard boom, 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 boom. Well, first he socked her. Yeah, once there.
In the eyes?
Yeah. Like right in this area. And then I seen the hair get pulled, and I go, oh no, I am watching nobody get beat up. This is not for me. I go, I'm leaving, guys. I don't know if they're both beating her up or what. I'm pretty sure, because Teresa, she's a little tired. And that's why I told you exactly what I remember.
Okay,
she pushed her first, and then he took it over. But they stayed in there together. They didn't come out.
Okay. And once they went into the bathroom, what assaults did you see take place in the
They
bathroom?
shut the door. I just heard the screaming and don't hurt me, don't hit me. I used to go through that. I go, I can't watch this. No, I'm going, Teresa. They didn't come out. They didn't say goodbye, nothing. They just kept in there beating her up.
So what would you say your main reason for not calling the police for
It's none
help?
of my business.
You don't think a woman being beaten and assaulted in a bathroom is any of your business?
No, it's not. It wasn't me, thank God. I used to get beat up in a bathroom. No one ever called out for me. I know better now. Anytime I hear something like that, I'll just call the cops.
According to the police, Laura Ortega was initially charged with first-degree murder. However, since she was not present during Abigail's murder, the charges against her have been dropped and she is free to leave. Now, investigators must track down Teresa Dean.
We tried whatever phone number we had for her. We had detectives go to her house that she had on the registration card for the motel, which was actually her mom's house. Wasn't there. She didn't live there. She was, mom didn't know where she was living. If not, she was homeless, just bouncing around. We were really trying to find her in as many locations as we could, whatever contacts we had.
While detectives attempt to locate Teresa Dean, they also investigate the full identity of the man known as Emilio.
She had met this guy that Mr. Kozak only knew as either Emilio or Danny or something like that was in her phone. With Mr. Kozak's help, we were able to get access to the bank account that she had because he was on that bank account. And it showed several transactions that we were able to follow up on. One of the things that really stuck out was a storage rental unit. Mr. Kozak brought that to our attention, and so that was looked into. And the name and phone number we got from there, the phone number matched what Mr. Kozak had given us. The name we got was Emiliano Uriasti.
Through statements from Laura Ortega and other witnesses, detectives learned more about the relationship between Abigail and Emiliano, and how Teresa became involved with them both.
Abby was very trusting. One of the things with her brain injury is she was just very, very trusting, to a fault. The desire for friends and friendship and companionship, Abby really wanted to have a normal life.
In the time period from Memorial Day, May 26th, until May 31st, she had withdrawn and spent, or it had been withdrawn and spent from her account, over $4,000. From what we knew, that was not Abby's pattern of spending.
Emiliano and Teresa used Abby's credit cards and money and bank cards right away. They were taking advantage of Abby from moment one. They were using her car. They traveled with her car to the motel. They had put Abby in the trunk of her own car, wrapped in plastic. These two suspects were depraved individuals who preyed on a vulnerable young woman.
As we were going through all the financial records and everything, we found the transaction that was done on the 31st, and it was done at the Walmart up in Thornton. We had detectives go out there and get security footage of the parking lot and the register and throughout the store of that time, and we were able to show both Teresa Dean and Emiliano Uriasti in the store at that time and making the purchases.
They bought cleaning supplies and lighter fluid. And it's always been kind of a creepy thing to think about that we were standing right at that hotel and Emiliano and Teresa Dean drove right by us, saw the police there and said, okay, obviously our plan's up.
Detectives investigating the murder of Abigail Kozad at the Primrose Motel still have no leads as to the whereabouts of their two prime suspects, Emiliano Uriaste and Teresa Dean, when they suddenly get an unexpected call on June 12th.
We had gotten the phone call that Emiliano was going to turn himself in, and his father was going to pick him up and bring him to us. His father owned a limousine service. He got into his limo that morning. We had undercover officers follow him, drove around, picked up another male, and then went to his grandmother's house where Emiliano came out, got into the limo, and they drove up to the jail. He was wearing a suit. Kind of had a look on his face of arrogance at the time as well. It was disturbing. That was the first in my career at that point. I still haven't seen it since.
He gets out, and never forget him putting on his sport coat like he's a celebrity at the Oscars or something. And just that arrogant walk. He wasn't turning himself in for murder. Worst human being I had ever met.
The gentleman that actually was with him said that he was his lawyer and that Emiliano would not be making any statements and that we were not to talk to him. A lot of times people will tell us they don't want to talk to us, especially when turning themselves in with a lawyer.
Teresa Dean is located the very next day on June 13th.
Her stepmother actually had contacted us and said that she had just spoken with her on the phone. She was down at a rehab center in Denver. And so one of our sergeants took her into custody.
I guess we can just get to it. The reason here that we're here tonight is because we're investigating a homicide that occurred in Adams County.
Okay.
Okay. And
So, hold on. Before we go any further, am I under arrest?
we are going to be talking about some things, okay? But I want to make sure
that sounds like an extremely big issue.
Okay.
So, I mean, when you hear homicide, like, I don't know anything, honestly, about anybody getting murdered or anything to do with that. So, with all due respect, sir, I want a lawyer.
She was denying everything, but too much. The stories would change a little bit here and there. And then she was always very, very adamant that she didn't do anything wrong.
So, Teresa, when we were in the hallway, when you were in the hallway, you mentioned that you now want to speak with us.
Well, I'd like to know exactly what's going on if I'm going to be accused of things like that, because I have nothing to do with no murder, and why would I honestly be arrested for first-degree murder if I didn't have nothing to do with it, or even know anything about a murder? I didn't have nothing to do with it. I didn't have nothing to do with nobody getting hurt, man.
Understand?
Okay, I never put a hand on that little girl. I didn't.
Okay. What happened with Emiliano and Abby? What you said?
He wigged out. He started smashing her against the dashboard. He started throw around the car. You know, he was telling her to jump. You know, like he. I thought he was gonna kill us both, and you know, like I wasn't an accomplice. You gotta understand that. Like I've never met this chick in my life.
Where were you in the car?
I was in the back of the car.
Back seat?
Yes.
Okay.
Were you
behind the driver's seat or the passenger seat?
I was behind the passenger seat.
And who was driving?
Emiliano was.
Okay.
Honestly, if I had an involvement with somebody honestly getting hurt, would I put my name on a hotel and grab the registration? I know he pulled out some money. I don't know if it was her money or his money or where, but I know he pulled out some money. That's what we used to get the hotel room. You know? Yeah, I did help her out of the trunk. Why? Because I didn't want to hurt, man. You know? I did. And then, you know, she was supposed to take a shower or take a bath. I went in there and checked on her real quick. Came out. Emiliano went in there and was alone with her. You know, me and Laura left. Came back and she wasn't there anymore.
During part of the interviews that we did, Laura, again, was interviewed.
Of course.
Okay. And she said that, again, she saw things happen. She saw what Emilio did, some things that Emilio did. She also claims that she saw you doing things as well.
Like what?
That you also assaulted her, that you grabbed onto her hair and you pulled her.
I didn't grab on her. I didn't
Why
grab
would she say
onto her
that?
hair and pull her.
Why would she say that?
I don't know.
Hey, Teresa, I'm going to tell you, okay? If you had to do something, you were there with him. I understand that he's a very intimidating person. You were very, very scared. But that's something that we're going to know, okay? So, we need to know exactly what went on because we're going to see it forensically when we look into this, okay? If you had to do something at the beginning and then get out of there as quick as you can, I understand that.
Well, he went ahead and, you know, I got to grab her and make her go to the bathroom. You know, take a shower, take a bath. But I don't, you know, like he was like, he said, I've never dealt with like that in my life.
Why did you have to grab her? Bring her back there?
But she wouldn't move. You know, she needed to be cleaned up. He was gonna sit there and hurt her even more.
Abigail Kozad had gone out for a double date with Emiliano Uriaste, Teresa Dean, and another man. Detectives were able to piece together what occurred in the car by interviewing the second man that attended the double date.
He had talked about that double date, and they were just treating her horribly. And then at another point, he had described Teresa Dean pulling Abby's hair and smacking her repeatedly.
We were trying to pressure her to get a motel room. Abby didn't feel comfortable with that. She just wanted to go home. Teresa started hitting Abby, saying, hey, don't disrespect your man like that. You know, don't talk back to him. You know, you should do what he says. The male that went with them said he didn't feel comfortable, and so he just wanted to go home. And so he asked them to drop him off at home, so they drove him home and dropped him off.
The only people remaining in the car are Abigail, Teresa Dean, and Emiliano Uriaste.
At this point, that's when Emiliano starts yelling and screaming at Abby. They're driving around. He's speeding around. He, at one point, grabs her, hits her head into the dashboard of the vehicle, and is trying to get her to jump out of the car and tries pushing her out, but she's thankfully wearing her seatbelt. You can't get her out. Then they got off at one of the exits, pulled off the road. Emiliano told Teresa and Abby to get out of the car. Teresa got out. Emiliano was already out. They had both closed the doors. Abby locked the doors. They couldn't get in the car. She managed to be able to get over to the driver's seat. Emiliano had then punched and broken the driver's side window, and he was able to get the door open and get Abby out of the car, at which time he was wrestling around with her, put her into a chokehold, and knocked her unconscious. So when you guys were in the car, and he's hitting her head against the
He stopped off and he dragged her outside and he started wrapping her up in plastic and he put her in the trunk and then he was, you know, like he broke out of, you know, I was like, no, you know, we gotta get it, you know, let her call me out, and I was like, come on, dude.
It had taken a long time for her to finally tell the truth about what she had seen. And she had information that matched the autopsy. She talked about Emiliano punching Abby in the face, right in the eyes, and described in detail how he was hitting her in the eyes. And during that autopsy, that matched her story very much because Abby's eyes were just destroyed.
She was bruised from the top of her head, literally the top of her head, all the way down to her feet.
We're gonna pause for just a second, okay?
Hey.
Hang tight. Be right back.
Yes, sir.
You just stand up for me and turn around. You're actually being placed under arrest.
Okay.
For first degree murder.
What? Are you serious?
I would never lie about something like that. That's a very serious charge. That's what
That's
you're being arrested for.
absolutely ridiculous. For I've never had nothing to do with no murder.
Teresa Dean is charged with first-degree murder and robbery. She pleads guilty and is offered a plea deal of 32 years in prison in exchange for her testimony against Emiliano Uriaste.
Does Teresa Dean deserve anything other than life without parole? Absolutely not. Do the families deserve more? Sure. I think it was a necessary thing we had to do strategically to ensure that Emiliano Uriaste, who was a very violent, evil sociopath, went away. And I'm not in any way saying that any of us feel great about that, but I certainly support the decision. It just had to be done that way.
I felt she was just as guilty, and I wanted her to have the same fate. I wanted her to face a jury. But I also understood how the system works. And, I agreed to the plea.
Abigail's family must wait a year for Emiliano Uriaste's trial to start to see if there will be any justice for her murder. The trial of Emiliano Uriaste takes place in June 2016, 1 year after Abigail Kozad's murder.
It was just as if it was another day for him. It was just another day. I'll be out of here, was the look on his face.
I remember a very distinct moment. I don't know why this sticks out with me, where he asked the court deputy for more water and he just kind of tapped on his glass like, service please. It was just that arrogance he always had.
When I saw Emiliano, I was angry. I wanted to beat him up. How can you have the entitlement to take somebody else's life? It just made me really mad to see him.
There was no remorse from Emiliano. He smiled through the entire trial. I didn't see him take any accountability whatsoever.
Teresa Dean testifies against Emiliano Uriaste.
I saw a person that was basically self-preservation. She was very manipulative. It was obvious. I think she was saving her own skin. She knew what she did.
I don't think you can ever adequately prepare a family for what they're going to see and what they are going to hear. I had talked to the family and I said, I'm going to show pictures of Abby, and I don't want you to see those pictures. Because once you see them, you will never get them out of your head. And I wanted them to remember the beautiful Abby and that they knew. And so I told them I would turn to them and I would put my hand down, and I just wanted them to not look at the pictures in the screen. And I remember during my closing argument, I turned to them and I slowly put my hand down, and they were all staring directly at me. They were with rapt attention. And in unison, they all bowed their heads, almost as if in prayer. It was just such a solemn and intense moment.
The jury is sent out for deliberation.
I'm always nervous when it goes back to a jury. There's always that What if I missed something? What if they missed something? What if they see it differently than we do, and as far as how we put the case together and how we present it?
It doesn't take long for the jury to reach a verdict.
Emiliano was convicted of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison.
Guilty of first-degree murder, guilty of felony murder, guilty of robbery, guilty of motor vehicle theft. I felt that we had done a good job for Abby and done a good job for her family.
I anticipated that maybe I would feel like some kind of a closure or justice had been served. And I think in Eliza Law, justice had been served. I don't know that the justice will ever be enough for me as a mother. Because you can never put closure to what happened to your child and the brutality.
But I did.
I would like the world to know that my sister was an amazing, smart, beautiful person that cared a lot about the people in the world, and I think we could all learn something from that.
Just her giggle, her presence. She was beautiful. She was just an awesome young woman.
We recently created an endowment in Abby's name. There's all kinds of help for people with mental health disorders, chemical imbalances, things like that. But brain injuries are completely different. And finding help for that, we found just was so hard. So we created Abby Kozad Memorial Endowment to help people with brain injuries, to help them find services, provide funds if they needed just medical equipment or whatever. And, Abby can help people that were in her situation from here on out.